Welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com is our email address. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. FloTrack.org/FloTrack podcast is where you can see all of the video episodes. You can really dive into the archive if you want to know, hey, what do those guys think about the NCAA Indoor Championships that were a couple months ago? You can do that. You can do that on the website. I'm Kevin. My co-host today is Lincoln. Good morning, Lincoln.
Yeah, good morning, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Doing all right.
Yeah.
I recommend highly, if people haven't listened to yesterday's podcast that Gordon did with Carl Lewis, to go download that immediately and check it out.
I didn't. It didn't publish before my run yesterday, but I'm looking forward to listening to it on on my run tomorrow. It dives into obviously current events, sounds like, and also The Office. I'm curious what that's going to have to deal with. There's pertinent information to, like we said, the serious nature of protests going on and what, but there's also some very, very, very lighter moments. So I'm Carl Lewis is just entertaining and always a worth a listen for sure. So I'm excited to check that out.
Yeah, and he has obviously a very, very vast perspective on the issue. I mean, this is a person in track and field. If you're talking about somebody who's been around at the top of the sport for decades and decades, he's the most, outside of Usain Bolt, the most recognizable person in track and field in the world, I would assume, still at this point, and obviously coaching a collegiate team. But yes, and him chiming in and giving his viewpoint on what's going on right now in the nation was very interesting to listen to. So recommend people check that out. On this podcast, we are going to talk about track, obviously a smaller issue, but one that we are talking about, I guess, more frequently now, because it seems like actual track could happen. So the question I pose to you, Lincoln, is what are you excited to see if track does come back in 2020? And I guess we could broaden this to running in general, because you could give me cross-country opinions if you want to. You could give me road racing opinions, but not to 2021. But if something comes back in 2020, what are you excited to see?
It's weird because I feel like we've been doing this all year, even going back to January, the kind of the 20 things we were excited about. And then it just completely
change it, though.
Hit pause. The first thing is I always start with the events, and I started with the sprints and work my way up when I try to wrap my mind around this. So, I mean, I go right to the 100, and I think of Christian Coleman, just specifically, not necessarily him matching up with anybody, not the Noah Lyles Christian Coleman matchup, but it felt like when we saw Coleman indoors when he just ran the U.S. championships and almost was close to his world record, it felt like he was entering even a new phase or a higher rung in fitness and confidence, and he just seems to be getting better, which clearly makes sense. He's very young, very new into his career. But 2020 was to be a year where I think he was going to just dominate, and even more so than he did in 2019. So if we get some track and he's able to compete in some of the diamond leagues, I'm very interested to see, even in this very shortened, truncated season, if he's able to, run several times in the 9.7s and really, assuming he's starting the way we're used to seeing him start, if he's able to take a leap forward from his dominance in the 100 and really establish himself even further as the top person in the sprints.
If he can run 9.7s this year, oh man, that would be insane. That would be incredible. And if he can run 9.7s this year, the American record is gone in 2021. That much is clear. He will obliterate that American record in 2021 with a full season of work behind him. I looked also at the short distances, but at the hurdles, and it's somebody who also made one brief but stunning performance in the indoor season, and it didn't come at the U.S. Championships, so perhaps it did not get the coverage that it deserved. But Grant Holloway, Lincoln, you heard of Grant Holloway? You ever interviewed Grant Holloway? You ever written anything about Grant Holloway? You know this guy?
I've done check. Yeah, all of them.
Okay. 7:38 in his first meet out the box. Now,
Yeah.
he ran heats before that, so it wasn't literally his first race, but that's it. You go onto his Teal Stapage page, you look at his results, it's one meet. That was it. And he did a 7:38, which is just off of what he did in 2019 when he got that American record. And we all know how good Holloway can be when he runs a million races, because that's what he
Yeah.
did throughout his college career. This was his first full year being a pro. He was going to scale down his racing anyway. He was not going to be doing the long jump. He was not going to be running the 4x4. Now he's even more scaled down because there hasn't been any races. But when you see a 7:38 like that, fresh out the box, if this season goes, if they're able to run a series of meets and he's able to get in 3 or 4 efforts, and they're going to run into August, October, the early part of fall. I know I skipped September there, but who really cares about September?
Whatever. No one
Yeah.
does.
I was like, does it go August, October? That doesn't sound right. That does not ring
Nope.
true at all.
Incorrect.
Right. If he's able to run into the early fall, I think we could see him PR.
That's interesting. I think he's a great candidate to really take his game to the next level too. And I hope that doesn't just come off as American bias. But when you look last year, he had to completely reset after kind of the collegiate season. And you wrote about it in your story from Doha when he won gold. He kind of had to, more so than even physically, mentally reset, because he was completely, mentally and physically probably toasted after all the emotions of indoors and then winning outdoors and getting that collegiate record, and all the talk about it. He had to come back and turn professional, and kind of some of that fire needed to be relit. And certainly some of that had to do with the fact that he was running 40 races and racing different things and still doing his jumping events. So in a season where he's fresh and not running the collegiate system, I know it's you have to suspend disbelief a little bit when you're talking about coming off of a massive period of no competition. But I think if he, based on like what you said, the 7:38 basically debut, he can be ready, and I assume this could still be a very promising year. Maybe he even PRs and really takes it to another level, just solely on the fact that he's going to be fresh and not work digging deep into the reservoir where he's running multiple events and going from January to October.
Yeah, that's got to be worth something, and we haven't really seen him do that. Even going back to high school, he was doing the high jump, he was doing the indoor pentathlon. He's always
playing
been doing
football, it's just like crazy.
He's always been doing multiple things that now that he has time and energy to reset and completely focus on one thing, I don't think it's outside their own possibility. I think we could look back, and it's tough because he has a contemporary in Daniel Roberts who is very good and could beat him and has beat him before. But I think we could look back in 5 or 6 years and say 2019 was the year to beat Grant Holloway, and people couldn't do it. And then he just ran off a string of titles. Because if you couldn't beat him in 2019, when he was on race number 44 of the season, in a year that drug on forever, in a year that had so many moments when he needed to be at his best, indoors, outdoors, U.S. championships. If you couldn't take him down then, when are you going to stop this guy?
Yeah. And I feel like the high hurdles is kind of an underrated event as a whole on the men's side that could, now it doesn't compare to the women's high hurdles, but it could, emphasis on could, develop into the caliber of event, say, as a men's 400 hurdles. Now, are they going to be challenging the world record every time out? Maybe not, but Holloway at 21 ran 12:98, and we know, I assume
Robert
at least
Sturgeon
Omar.
Platt.
Yeah, and we assume Omar McLeod is going to be coming back at that level, assuming he doesn't just bulldoze everyone left and right of him. He's going to be back into his 12:90 shape at some point, and Shabenkov is there. And there's other guys I think who can run that caliber. Maybe we start seeing a bunch of races in the 12.9 lows, and then it gets to the question of, can somebody get down to that world record thing? It's not
Mhm.
yet, of course, at a position where we're thinking it's not a Warholm Benjamin type of a situation yet, but I think it could be. I think it certainly
Yeah.
has that potential.
All it takes is one person to start pulling it along, and then
Mm-hmm.
you see these things are cyclical. These events all have their moment when they have a chance to run historic times. And over the past 10 years, you've seen events cycle in and then events cycle out. A couple years ago, 4 meter hurdles for the men's was not the big ticket event. It was an afterthought, and especially when it
Yeah.
came to running historical times. And then within the matter of 2 years, it escalated dramatically. So I'm looking forward to seeing Grant Holloway and what he can do in this season if they can run again. Another easy one, which I'm sure you were going to mention, but I'll just say it because this is an obvious one: Kipchoge versus Bekele.
Yeah. Will we see the matchup? I mean, will that race take place this fall is still a big mystery. It's interesting. Those two have been like they're not traditional rivals in the sense that they're like on the same, they're part of the NN running team or whatever that's called, and they've done like social media work together. They're doing some community virtual race coming up. I'm not exactly sure of the details, but
Yeah.
so that to me would say, I think they're going to make an effort to actually race each other when it's safe and when things come back together. So I feel more confident that race, whether it be in 2020 or 2021, is actually going to happen. I just hope that they're both still at the caliber. They're both operating at full capacity, and
Mm-hmm.
we with I of course feel more confident about Kipchoge than I do about Bekele, but he's seemed to be on the right track, and I don't know what else
Mm-hmm.
to say. Is I just yes, of course we want to see that go down, and gosh,
Well, that's
the ramifications of
I,
that race are huge.
I don't know about your list, but on my list, that's the only one that has an expiration date to it. Really.
Mm. What, you just elaborate a little bit on it? You just because of their age?
Yeah, because of their age and because of Bekele's inability to be a consistent marathoner. I think
Mm-hmm.
this spring would have been the time. Now, I did not have access to his training. I didn't know if he was completely healthy, but he was just a few months off of a 201.41. Kipchoge was just a few months off of what he did in Vienna. It's hard to recapture that. It's hard to recapture that
Mm-hmm.
in the marathon. It's hard to recapture that with two guys who are in their late 30s and one guy in particular who's had a mercurial relationship with the event. All these other
Mm-hmm.
things, like, okay, we don't see Holloway or Christian Coleman or some of these other names on the list. It's like, yeah, they'll have a chance in 2021, 2022, but this is the one where if you don't see it now, you don't know if it's going to be possible in the future just because of the way things work.
Do you trust Bekele anymore? Not that you've had any reason to see it other than the 201.41, but do you trust? Was that such an outlier performance that you looked at it and said, sorry, a lot of coffee this morning. The creamer is giving me a thin layer of film in the back of my throat. It's delightful.
I hope it was vegan.
Um,
Was it vegan creamer?
oh, come on now, of course.
Okay. Just keeping you honest.
Do, do you trust that Bekele is going to be more consistent just based on how fast he ran last September?
No,
Mm,
no, I don't. I mean, it,
yeah.
you put that in there, but that's the mark. Like inconsistent is a good word, and it's also a bad word, right? Because you could be consistently a 209 marathoner, or you could be an
Mm-hmm.
inconsistent 201 guy, and he's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
inconsistent 201 runner right now. But no, if you told me he was going to get, if they were able to simulate the results of London and he got fifth, I would not have been surprised. I
Yeah.
would not have been
It's
surprised if he got second. The only thing I would have been surprised about is if Kipchoge lost because he doesn't do that.
true. It's so interesting because Bekele's career on the track versus the marathon. Of course, this has been said 1,000 times, but I mean, he was certainly quite consistent on the track, and his medal collection
Yeah.
shows as much. And no one's perfect, and but I, man, if he can never
Most people
figure it
aren't
out
consistent.
consistently on the marathon. Yeah. No, I know, and we set him on against the back because of how good Bekele was on the track, and because technically, if you want to, you could still have Bekele in the argument as the greatest distance runner of all time. I mean, he's up
Mhm.
against a serious legend there, and I know that the distances. What do you stretch that from 800 to marathon? It's imperfect, but
Mhm.
I mean, if someone wanted to say Bekele is the best overall distance runner of all time, I'm willing to listen to that argument. And it's just
Yeah.
crazy to think that but then you look at Kipchoge and you're like, well, compared to Kipchoge, he's been so inconsistent. When in
Mhm.
reality, that's pretty much the story for everyone in the marathon. It's just that
Yeah.
set against almost the nearly flawless record of Kipchoge, it makes him look worse by comparison.
Mhm. Do you want me to do another one, or do you want to go?
Oh, I was just going to mention on the side, or not on the side, but will we see Salwa Nasser and Johnny Miller Weibo race
Mm.
this year? Um,
I'm
they
guessing a
pretty
no
much,
because we never saw them
yeah,
race when there
yeah,
was not a pandemic.
they avoid each other seemingly during the regular season. They did that all of 2019. I wouldn't say they avoid each other. It's almost like Miller Weibo kind of avoids Nasser because Salwa Nasser races almost all the 400s in the Diamond League. So I don't want to necessarily put all the blame on Miller Weibo, but I mean, we talked about it last year when she was running all these events that weren't Diamond League races, and like just like I think she could have benefited in hindsight by racing Nasser and kind of
Hmm.
knowing, be more familiarized with her tendencies. Now she also ran into a 48-14 buzzsaw, so I don't really know what else you're going to do with that.
Yeah.
Considering Miller Weibo ran 48-3, I mean, so I don't think there was much she could have done other than
There's no game plan for that.
yeah. So, but I mean, I'm holding out to the sliver of possibility that we maybe see those. That feels super small, so maybe I shouldn't have even brought it up. But it feels like an event that in the months since Doha hasn't quite gotten its credit for how it could be right on the level of a Sydney versus Dalila, Carson versus Rai Benjamin and Samba. I mean, it has that ability if they actually get out and do it. And I hope
Yeah.
to, if we see some track, if we can get those two together.
Yeah. No, that's not a bad pick. I mean, we're all wishing and hoping there's track. So even the fact that there's meets would be
Yeah.
an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Let alone ones between people from different countries. I put Caster Semenya in there as well too because she was getting going in the 200 because they had some early season meets. I don't know if you remember that in South Africa,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then those stopped. But her pursuit for that Olympic standard in the 200 will be fun to track as she tries to
Remind.
just
Yeah.
stick it to World Athletics. She's about a half second off, I think, right now.
Okay, because she ran what in the 22 highs or what
Yeah,
was it?
I don't. You're
Yeah,
you're
it's
you're you're you're
something.
testing my 200
Yeah,
meter
yeah.
standard time here. Which,
You need
as an
to.
American fan, we've never had to worry about what the standard
Yeah.
is for the women's 200 because
Yeah.
every American woman has it.
Right. I would not be concerned that Caster Semenya will figure this event out. I know she's quite a bit taller than what a 200-meter runner would typically be on the women's side. And, well, the 800s are a perfect event. So she's coming down to a distance that's a quarter of what she should actually be running through no fault
Yeah,
of her own. But uh, I would expect her to develop into a pretty good 200-meter runner. Now, a finalist, I don't know. I wouldn't count it against her. A medalist, I
that'd be
think that's
crazy.
a very slim chance. But I mean, she's figured out every other event she's run. She's a good 400-meter runner. It's certainly a possibility.
We were talking about Rudisha before. I think on that last week. You and I were talking about Rudisha. Must have been.
Yeah.
And I was saying if he made the Olympic team, it'd be a huge accomplishment. I would put that same test to Semenya of the.
Mm,
I mean, going into the Olympics, we need to have the all high profile, but you should really have realistic expectations team about what they can do. And
yeah.
I think both of them would be on that because
Well, I
expecting
mean,
an 800-meter runner to
yeah.
make a final in the 200 is a lot to ask.
You don't think Donovan Brazier could get up there with Noah Lyles?
I've always thought he could just drop down in distance. I mean, I thought Bolt moving up to the 800 made a lot of sense too. I guess he was a 100-meter runner too. So I guess you need to find like a pure 200-meter runner and say, hey, maybe someone like Christophe Lamette, I really thought had 800-meter potential. No, you don't see it. You don't see it because it's crazy. 400, 800 is crazy. The fact that she's a 400, 1500 runner is crazy too.
But don't you think the fact that she's from South Africa, not rich in sprinting tradition, they're not going to have a deep bench of athletes going to be trying to vie for those spots? I mean, that she has a very real shot at making the Olympic team.
No, she needs to hit the standard. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
She doesn't need to. She doesn't need to go through any other process. But cutting that much time is a significant amount of spot. I mean, that's a significant amount of improvement. It does. She doesn't need to. I don't think she's vying for a spot with a large group of people. I don't think South Africa had anybody in the 200 the last Olympics. Yeah. It's just a time trial. I mean, she's like the person who's really good in the county over from you, who's like, yeah, they're in the 400. Yeah. The mile, the 200.
Yep.
Did like Laura Raisler or someone when they were in high school win everything from the 100 to the 800 or
when I think of this example, I think of Raisler in North Dakota and then Isaiah Harris in Maine. They were kind of the 800-meter runners who cleaned up as high schoolers just because they were great and also because they were in less than competitive states. So that's Caster Semenya basically.
They
on
scored
the
like
global
60
scale,
points by themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, great track teams. It highlights the importance of having track as a scored team event for sure.
Yeah. My next thing that I'm looking forward to, Mondo.
You haven't got enough Mondo this year?
Well, listen, if the season ended right now, he's the athlete of the year. So maybe he risks some of that by coming back. If he comes back and there's track and other people somehow manage to break world records, then they're going to jump ahead of Mondo on the athlete of the year for the men. But I just want to see the guy keep going. Talk about calling a timeout when you're on a 24-0 run in a basketball game. That's what Mondo was doing. Except the timeout wasn't called by him. I mean, I don't know if he's ever going to have that much momentum again, but I'd like to see it.
I would think so, considering he's 20, but yes, if there's anybody that needs to continue their season, it's him, because the outdoor world record would have fallen. I'm 100% sure of it, considering it's shorter than it's lower than the indoor world record.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't have much else to say on it though. But when you're smashing world records and clearing 6 meters in every single competition, and then, of course, when you tie for the win in the Ultimate Garden Clash, the world needs to see your skills in real competition. So we will get to see him, though, at the in little over a week's time at the Impossible Games.
Yeah.
He breaks the world record there. That's going to be tough.
On a shorter term schedule, just seeing the Impossible Games is something I'm looking forward to. Right? That'll be they'll be on it. They'll be on a physical track with other people.
5,000 word essay coming on the Team Ingebrigtsen versus Team Chariot matchup. It's I'm excited to break down all of the intricacies of that one.
So that's next Thursday, huh? That's coming soon.
It's coming soon.
Do you want to do like a emergency reaction pod?
I was thinking pod? That. I think we have to. It's the first real track meet since who cares? It's the first real track meet since February. I don't know. No, I guess early March, but
conference. Indoor conference meets. Well, there was someone, they kept going in other countries for a little bit, and they've had some random meets in Europe, but this one, I mean, Team Ingebrigtsen versus Team Chariot, Mondo, if he's there. You have that Norwegian women's record attempt featuring the strobe light that I personally I'm in for that one. I'm 100%. I can write that part of the essay if you want me to co-write it. I can do 1,500 words on just the strobe light, or that is going to pace Grovedal to this record.
You just said a whole bunch of words I'm unfamiliar with, but great. I'm so
It's
excited, and
the
it's
light.
really
The light is pacing her. She's doing it by
yeah,
herself, I think. And there's gonna be a light on the inside of the track, and it's going at the pace of Greta Weitz's record. And she's just got to keep up pace with the light.
got it. Cool.
And it's legal.
I'm
It's
ex-
legal. I saw the rules. It is
oh,
legal.
really?
They could do this
How
in
does
any
that
meet.
work?
Yeah, they could do this in any meet. Yeah.
That's like, it's like technological assistance, right? That's like that. If
Yeah.
that's the precedent, shouldn't Kipchoge's thing count?
Well, I think if it's not a human being pacing you, I think that's the difference. Uh,
Okay.
I guess it's kind of
Hmm.
akin to if you got remember in Berlin they got the car kind of close there and they got the bikes kind of close there
Okay.
as a reminder. This is a reminder that this is the world record pace. We're not
Yeah.
pacing you,
Sure.
but we just happen to be
Mm.
riding at 202 flat pace. I think that's what
Yeah.
this is. I don't.
Yeah.
You can take your Carson Warholm 300-meter hurdle attempt. I'm going with the lights any day
I
of the
saw
week.
something. Not that I'm being super cynical about this Warholm thing, but his like, I thought I read somewhere his indoor 300-meter hurdles
Mm-hmm.
PR, which I don't know, is faster than the outdoor world record.
Yes. Yes.
So, like this be a like, what are we even? I mean, like, sweet. I
No,
mean,
no,
we're excited to watch him
no, no, no.
absolutely demolish this record.
The question that you're asking yourself is, wait, there's an indoor 300-meter hurdles? That's
Yeah,
the
you're
question that
right.
you're asking yourself.
Yeah, yeah. That seems is that on a slant? Like, is it if that was
On a
in
bank track?
Birmingham, they just disqualify everyone before they even started. They'd just be like, "Well, we know how this is going to go," so it's everyone's DQ'd.
Um, you're
Yeah, on
right,
bank
but
track.
yes, but you're going to get to see Carson Warholm slap his face. You're going to see him
Yeah.
yell. He's going to
Mhm.
pose at the end. It's going to
Mhm.
be like
Okay.
you're going to get a world record out of this. You're going to potentially get one Norwegian record, maybe two. You're going to get the Ingebrigtsens running, and you're going to get Mondo potentially vaulting. For a one-off meet, that's a bit. That's some stories.
I'm excited for the world leads. Like, there's gonna be a lot of world leads run here, and 2K
300
world
meter hurdle.
lead, 300-meter hurdle, 2K world lead. You know,
Hey, hold on
so,
though. 300-meter hurdles. That's run in a lot of states in high school, so Warholm
yeah.
can't dawdle too much.
Oh no, yeah, he's got it. And the world, he's looking to break the 39:08 world lead
Yeah.
run by Danny Johnson Jr. in Virginia.
At the VA icebreaker meet.
Oh man,
Okay, I got another one here. How
yeah,
about this
good.
one? How about this event was going to be interesting this year from the American perspective, especially women's 5,000. Women's
Mm,
5,000. You have Krisha Schweizer coming off a dynamite 3,000-meter American record that she broke down with Lincoln Shrike, on this very website. You have Vanessa Frazier of Bowerman, who's on the mend now. She had to have surgery, but
yeah, I was gonna say
she
she's
ran a
got
really
two
fast
double
5,000.
boots. Yeah.
Right. You had El Purrier doing what she did in the mile indoors. And then if you want to broaden this out internationally, you obviously have a chance to see Sifan Hassan, although you can see her at any number of events. But Schweizer's one of those people where, man, it was clicking at the right time in the
Mm-hmm.
Olympic year. She was
No,
rolling.
oh, absolutely. I mean, she ran 8:25, beat Shelby Houlihan. I don't think we could say she elevated. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but she hadn't elevated to the pedestal of a potential medalist, but she's elevated to maybe one or two rungs below that, if there is such a place. I don't think she's in no woman's land.
What's your
She's
rung ranking for the women's
mhm,
5,000 right now?
um, starts with congrats, you made the US team.
Yeah.
You are going to get bounced out of the first round. And then it goes up from you can maybe make a final. Then it
Mm-hmm.
goes to you're not going to completely get embarrassed in the final. Then it goes to, oh, you've got top 10 potential. Then it goes to, ooh, a good race. You might get top 5. Then it goes to, oh my God, is this actually possible? Then it goes to, oh, Sifan Hassan just ran 57 in the last lap. Just,
Okay, so she's
I
the third
made
one
that up.
on there. No,
Yeah.
no, she's the third one on there. Those were good rungs, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I commend
Thank
you
you.
for coming up with those. Oh
Mm-hmm.
man, she could get top 5. I think that's where she's at.
Yeah. 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 Totally. Totally. I think that's, the finishing speed to keep up with Shelby Houlihan, even though Houlihan said on our podcast, like he was just having an off day, which is fine. But I still think Shelby Houlihan's off day is pretty darn good. And for Schweizer to beat her and have that finishing speed, which that wasn't something coming out of college that Schweizer was known for, even though she had good mile times. But now it feels like, she's not quite on a Klosterhoffen level just yet, just based on the sheer volume, but she's approaching, she's knocking on the door to be somebody who's a fringe medalist.
Yeah, if you looked at okay, who's going to make a Olympic or World Championship final, you'd have three from Kenya, three from Ethiopia. You'd have Coco, you'd have Safan Hassan there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then she's in that group. I mean, she was ninth. She was ninth last year at the World Championships, and she's gotten better since then.
Oh, way
so
better.
I think
Yeah.
I think that's where you start. I think that's where you start with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think at least. I don't know. And maybe this indoor season was a continuation of just like kind of what went on last year, because last year did drag on for so long.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the fact that this event is on the women's side of things it was an afterthought to the women's 10 and the women's 1500. And I like the fact that women's 5, there's some 5,000 meter specialists in there that are going to make that event really interesting. And I don't know, based on the schedule at trials, who's going to do what, but there's some people who they're not just doubling back for the 5,000 just for the heck of it, but that's their event and that's their best shot at a medal, because that's been a scratch happy event before.
Right.
Or
it's
just
nice to have some...
or a secondary event. Oh, I ran the 10 and then I'll jump in the 5 and qualify.
Yeah. And we know there's no shot of medals. Yeah, the event has quickly changed. I mean, it's quickly flipped. It's it's like you had a basketball team in high school, and the roster in 2019 was all 5'11" guys, and the center was 6'2",
Mm-hmm.
and then everybody hit puberty in the over the summer, and then all of a sudden they've got everybody 6'7" and above. That's a very weird comparison I just made. I'll go with it, but that feels like what happened in the women's 5,000. That it became a serious game in the U.S. Basically overnight. And I don't know.
Because Purrier got 11th too. I mean, Purrier got 11th, and I know
she made the final, and she took a big step up. There's still questions about what she can do when it's tactical, considering she got her doors blown off at USA's by Houlihan. That was just one race, though. But when you run 4:16, you got to be taken seriously in the 5,000, I think. So big excitement there to see what can be done as far as times. I know Houlihan mentioned that she didn't feel like her American record was safe at the hands of Schweizer, and I hadn't even thought about that, but of course that makes sense after she gets the 3K American record and then ran 14:48 in a final. So that may not be 2020, but it's coming. It's definitely coming down the road. I would expect Schweizer to get that in the next 2 years.
Well, look at it this way. I think the women's 10 is first. I think it's the men where they're switched at the trials next year. Yeah. So you could have, but women's 15 is first though, because I remember Shelby saying before that she'd run the 5 there, but at the Olympics the double's not possible. So just assume that that's the schedule, because I think it is the schedule. Just trust me on this one. Yeah. Well, women's 10. I mean, I don't know if someone like Schweizer would double, but you got to figure Huddle and Sisson are going to be ready. Huddle and Sisson are going to be ready. That's their only path to the Olympics now that the marathon is out. So just say, for example, it's those two plus, just say Mariel Hall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then by the time you get to the 5,000 at the end of the meet, I mean, those 3 women, yes, they could double back, but when you have a trio like the 3 that we've mentioned before, it's going to be tough for them to make it, right? Houlihan could obviously jump in there, and you'd expect her to make top 3, but it's kind of fun when everybody is just number one, everybody's racing an event that they plan to compete at in the Olympics. So it's top 3 or bust, but also everybody kind of has that do or die mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was
no backup plans.
this was an event even dating back to last summer that Shelby Houlihan could just hop in and dominate at the
Yeah.
at the U.S. Championships, and maybe that's still the case. Maybe she's still the favorite, even if she's not going to run it at the games. But I don't think it's not a cakewalk for her anymore, and it's crazy how that flipped. All right, I have an event maybe that not a lot of people are talking about, especially compared to the men's side of it, but we never really got. I know she ran a half marathon, but we haven't seen the encore of Bridget Kosgei after running 2:14. There
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem to be a ton of hype about her.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's other things. There's a few other things going on in the world right now, but like, am I the only one that's excited to see like what her next marathon is going to look like? Because she took 80 seconds off Paula Radcliffe's record. I mean, what I just that's still unbelievable as we stand here. Even I mean, we've kind of compared it to what Kipchoge did in the 159 race. It feels like we don't know her full potential yet, and I don't know. Excited to see what she can do if London happens and beyond.
Yeah. I think yes, she was the victim of timing. Like a bad set of, like, when she ran that time. I'm trying to pull up. I remember I posted a tweet about this. I remember all my tweets, Lincoln. So there was
Mm-hmm.
one tweet that I had that I felt encapsulated this moment, and I'm going back. Wow, a lot of Lincoln Strike retweets here.
Well,
Here we go.
good.
Um, this was on October 12th. Last 2 weeks in the running world, someone does a 15 10K double. A woman runs 48:14, sub 2 marathon. Most famous coach is banned for 4 years. Most famous group is disbanded. Craig Engels cuts his mullet. And then the next
Mm-hmm.
day,
Good
I
grief.
had to amend it. I had to amend it
Yeah,
with, and a woman broke the marathon world record. So
yeah,
all of those
by over a
things,
minute. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, uh, yes, you're right. I want to see what's the pull factor here. Is it just Kosgei by herself, or is this a whole new era here? Is she
I would
grabbing
think
people
there's
and
got to
taking them
be
along for the
some. I
ride?
don't think she's 3 minutes going to just be 3 minutes better than everyone. I think there's a gigantic. I don't know that term, but pull factor. I can understand what by context clues what you're saying. AK, she's going to pull people
Well, there's a
along with
push
her.
or a push or a pull. I don't know, something
Okay.
like that. I don't. I'm not a wordsmith like Gordon. I don't know.
She
Uh,
can't. Yeah, jeez. She
she got
can't
beat
be
in that
that
half
much better
marathon
than
though.
everyone else. Yeah. I mean, half marathons, I literally want to destroy that distance. It's not real. That's why our king, His Majesty Eliud Kipchoge, doesn't even bother with that distance because it's not real. So yeah, I mean, can she break a world record? I mean, I have the feeling that is an outlier performance never to be touched. But one thing we haven't talked about, thank God, for the last few months is shoes. She
Don't
hasn't
say it.
she hasn't put on
Uh,
the Alpha Flies yet.
uh. You don't have any respect
uh,
for Ababel Yeshane, 64:31?
yeah, not in the full. No, I don't
Okay.
even care. If you've run 2:19, you're in the top whatever all time, and you're 5 minutes behind. I mean, it's just like what world is this? Is this?
Yeah.
I just two for you. This can't be something where uh, we need to see the follow up to 2:14. It's like it's
Right.
like we've been left on a cliffhanger on Breaking
Okay.
Bad, and then they're like, well, we're gonna delay the next season
Mm-hmm.
by 4 years. I mean, it's like I'm waiting on my edge of my seat to see what Bridget Kosgei is going to do, I
Okay.
should say.
That's a good one. I have one more left, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not road racing. It's not track and field. It's a little
Oh
sport
wow.
called cross country, Lincoln.
No. Yeah.
And I don't
Did you
know
get
if
this
we'll
from
have cross
Gordon?
country.
Are you waiting to see who Portland's seventh man is going to be this year? Is that's like something Gordon would do?
They got 3 transfers of
Yeah.
guys. No,
Yeah.
I do not know anything about what's going on in Portland. I do know that BYU and NAU are really good, and I do know that that is a full blown rivalry right now, and I want to see it. And I don't
Mm.
know if we're gonna get sports. I think they're bringing football teams back onto campus now, which will be indicative of whether or not there's fall sports, but I think it's a positive sign that they're doing that if it goes off without a hitch. Obviously, there's a bunch of other hurdles when you're considering doing that, but I just saw, who was it? Was it USC yesterday was talking about they're going to have in person classes. So a lot of people
Mm,
seem to be adapting this go back early and then dismiss early schedule to try to move around that wave, the purported second wave. But yes, we'll put that aside. Yeah, it is USC. They announced yesterday they're going to start
okay.
August 17th, a week earlier than they thought they were than what was
Oh
scheduled, and
wow.
then it would end
Wow.
end at Thanksgiving. So whatever, put all that aside because we're operating under the idea that track and field and sports are going to be back mostly to full form. BYU NAU on the men's side, it's going to be awesome. It's like, again, it's a rivalry now. It's real, and
Mm,
NAU brings almost everybody back, and BYU brings a lot of people back and adds pieces that have been around the program but didn't race next year. So it's not new groups of people, and I think that's going to be exciting.
yeah, of course. I I'm very interested to see how the
You're
addition of
speechless.
Nico Young. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how the addition of Nico Young goes because he feels like a freshman that could make a gigantic impact. I think he's that good, and NAU's younger guys that were solid last year, their group of freshmen will be much more experienced and have that fire in their belly to be back. But it also, on the same token, BYU got the monkey off their back to finally win a title, and they get Casey Klinger back after a mission, and Connor Mance, assuming he's healed from his injury. That's going to be a team that's just as good, if not better, even after they lose a couple guys, because they fill those holes
Yeah.
admirably. So yeah, a rivalry as much as it can be in cross country with a bunch of skinny dudes running, and it's got a chance to be really really special. Even though as a rivalry, we see them basically twice. They're going to race at regionals and then nationals. So,
Right. Right. But at least it's legit. You don't need to
yeah,
work hard to make this a rivalry. It's a legit
and
rivalry
listen,
now.
the course at Oklahoma State is so unique that it's going to force teams to be prepared differently than it would be in a normal circumstance. This is People haven't seen this course. It's a monster. It challenges you every step of the way because of the undulations of the hills, and they've got wood chips there. You can hardly wear spikes. I mean, it's just a totally different thing, and that will play a huge role in who's more prepared for that. I would think that leans a little bit more to the NAU side of things, but we shall see. Now, first, we just need to have a cross country season. I mentioned Oklahoma State, and they just had one of their football players. They had reported back to campus, and one of their football players who attended a protest in Tulsa came back and tested positive for COVID. Now, that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
shut down the whole NCAA plan, I don't imagine, but it does show you, reopening these campuses and getting these athletes back in the programs. It comes with its own set of risks. So, crossing our
Yeah.
fingers for NCAA sports this fall.
Yeah, and it's something like cross country where there's not huge crowds. It's if you're going to have classes open, I feel like going and competing at cross country meets, the risk isn't that much different. Now, granted, there's travel involved in that, which introduces
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of other risks, but um, you're not sitting in a 300 person lecture hall. You're not sitting in a crowded dorm. Your university has people from all over the world, most of these places too. It's not the same as going into an airport and or staying at a hotel, but there are people from all over and people who are going on weekend trips and then coming back to campus. So there's obviously risks there. It's just a matter of how they're managing the risk. I'm sure there will be different precautions, and maybe at that point there'll be faster tests so people can identify identify positive tests, and then make more tests so you can know like who's asymptomatic, things like that. But from a running perspective, yeah, like I want to see that NAU group now has. I mean, they were already motivated, or a young group, and like Drew Bosley, he hasn't won a title. Abdi Amanur hasn't won a title. Blaze Farrow's won a title. Obviously, that the program has titles, but there's a lot of young guys, who haven't
Mm-hmm.
been a part of a title team there that they're going to want to get their first title. Obviously, Nico Young
Yeah.
has not won a title yet at NAU. And on the BYU side of things, and I'm talking to Ed Eyestone tomorrow, so maybe I'll ask him this, but just like the desire to be like, yeah, that wasn't a fluke. We're like legit and we're here. Mance is going to be gunning for that individual title, right? Because I
Yeah.
think last year he thought, rightly so, hey, I'm the best guy in the nation. And then now that Kurgat
Mm-hmm.
is gone and Klecker's gone, right? It's his turn.
Top returner.
It's his
Yeah.
chance. Yeah, yeah. And then you have someone
Yeah.
like Klinger coming back and Shumway. It's gonna be fun. It's fun to know the players going in to the season. And if
Yeah.
Gordon were here, he'd say also look out for Arkansas on the men's side of things because they're getting a bunch of top talent there in Fayetteville. So perhaps there'll be a surprise third team, but at the very least, all the players from these two teams.
Mm-hmm. You sound awfully confident that there's going to be cross country in the fall, and you listed all the potential roadblocks and the travel and things that, man, really complicate it. But not the sport itself is maybe easier to put on because you mentioned the crowds, but I don't know. I don't have. I'm bullish as you on that there's going to be NCAA sports, but I guess there's a lot of financial interest to making it happen.
I think if there's going to be football, there's going to be cross country. And it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like if there's going to be classes, there's going to be football. And right
Yeah.
now they're organizing and structuring classes, but I think all of it moves together is what I think. Again, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. This is just one person's opinion
Yeah.
from reading what's out there. And I don't think you can't say, yeah, let's let football play, but cross country can't go.
But don't you think we're going to have, I mean, as soon as we have one campus who has a little bit of an outbreak, we're just going to be like, what are we doing here? I mean, aren't we just waiting for that inevitable thing to drop? I mean, that just feels like that's inevitable. Like I said, in football, football player at Oklahoma State just got coronavirus from
Yeah.
and he's coming onto campus and they're isolating him. I mean, this just feels like something we haven't been able to control as a country. So why do we think on the school institution level that's going to be controlled? And then at what point are you saying this has gone in a
Yeah.
totally different topic direction than I think you intended? But I just don't know. I mean, it's like, oh, we're having classes, but you're not going to be able to. Okay, so everybody's going to have masks on, and then we're going to, okay, great. But I mean, like, we can't trust kids to socially distance in dorms, and there's going to be outbreaks, and and then at what point do you
I
have
think
to
it's
pull the
just
plug?
it's about managing it. I don't think they're going to shut down. They're not going to shut down a whole semester of classes for cases. I don't think. I mean, and I think that goes into treatment and testing and tracing and those sort of things. But I think the idea is, okay, if we have it, we'll treat it like some of how these communities and some of the places that have dealt with it before have treated it, and we're not going to completely we're not going to cancel everything right away. And also, I think they'll know more in 2 months, right? I mean, these classes aren't starting for 2 more months. Think where we were 2 months ago with this. That was at the very beginning of April. We were only basically 2 months into a modified lockdown or a complete lockdown in some parts of the world. So I just think there'll be more information out there. I'm not 100% that it's going to happen. I think
Yeah.
there's still some stuff up in the air, but when you're saying that classes are going to happen, to me that's a positive sign. But I also I just don't think they're going to treat it like, okay, University X has cases. Let's
Yeah, we got it.
abandon the whole season.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
that's fair.
they're gonna figure out a way to work around it. But
Well, and let's be
we had
real
two.
here. I mean, Mark Emmert's going to look at this and be like, I know it's going to be tough, but we got to cancel things. And then he's going to have one of his lieutenants, assistants be like, Mark, BYU versus NAU in cross country. He's like, right. I cannot cancel fall sports. We got the best rivalry in sports. We got to keep it going.
Well, but that's I mean that's an interesting point though, because it's basically like where do you stop it, right? If you're canceling. So if you're saying this team can't play because of an outbreak, does that mean every team in the conference can't play? That's the entire nation that can't play. And that's a tough spot with the NCAA because it does seem to move as one. Two emails here I wanted to read though.
Okay.
One here from Bill about the sub 4 minute milers when you guys ranked them um, last week. I believe that was last week.
Is it something about
Yes.
Gordon's statement about Tim Danielson? Because I'd be willing to hear that.
No, 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 no,
No,
no,
okay,
no, no. It
okay,
says
okay, okay.
he says great. He says great podcast, by the way. But one thing that wasn't mentioned about Jim Ryan at the 1968 Olympics is that he won the silver medal after missing weeks of training with mononucleosis. I think if he didn't get sick, he would have beaten Kip Keino for the gold.
Mm. Yeah,
I
that's news to me. I hadn't. I feel bad when we have to when these things inevitably come up because I realize I'm not as educated on my 1968 track, and I say that somewhat lightheartedly, but also at the fact that I probably should know that if I'm going to be talking seriously about Jim Ryan and his legacy as probably one of the greatest American distance runners. So wasn't aware of that. That's a famous race. I do know, Let's Run had done their thing where they were talking about Jim Ryan as the greatest American distance runner, and I remember there was talk online about how Kano ran like 320 something at
mm-hmm,
really high altitude. So which
mm-hmm.
converts down to like 326 or whatever. And they were talking about the legitimacy of that. But Kano, looks like he was awfully tough to beat at those games. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We do a rewatchables. We do that on that. Maybe we think Kano is truly unbeatable. Well, it's tough. It's tough.
Well, okay. Speaking of rewatching old episodes, we got two here from John that I wanted to read about the 2 mile/1500 races we broke down. The first one was that 2017 women's 1500 at the World Champs. He has a couple additional thoughts about what makes Simpson a tactical genius, in quotes, compared to Laura Muir. One, Simpson runs to win a medal. In 2016, 17, and 19, Muir ran to win gold. That's why Muir goes with a break in each race, and Simpson holds back and distributes her effort much better, frequently, as you pointed out, taking the shortest route on the inside lane. Two, Simpson isn't actually quick enough to cover breaks like Dababa made in Rio and Hassan made in London. She is the female Nick Willis, or rather, Nick is the male Jenny. You know why she didn't move wide with 80 meters to go? She knew she wasn't quick enough to get past Hassan, so the inside track was the only option, and she
Mm-hmm.
got lucky. Three, Muir's problem isn't just that she goes with the break, it's also the way she goes with the break. When she followed the breaks of Dabab and Hassan, she had to accelerate hard. She doesn't distribute her effort as evenly as the leader, and certainly not as well as Simpson does behind her. That kind of acceleration may be possible in the last 400 of a race, but she's doing it in the third lap. As Nick Willis said in your excellent interview with him, the guys in Rio who accelerated before the bell to get in position couldn't maintain it for the whole last lap.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
four, Simpson can handle herself in a rough race. With 600 to go, she squeezes in between the Swede and Muir gives Muir an elbow. At 500 to go, she has left a big gap on her on the inside, but when Muir tries to accelerate through, she elbows her again and moves inside, so Muir has to go wide. All perfectly legal, of course. And by the way, you know who Simpson reminds me of the most? Ian Stewart. But because she is American, she's a tactical genius, whereas Stewart was a cowardly Brit who stole the medal off Brave Heroic Free. Smiley face. Keep up the good work. That is John. And then I want to read what he wrote about the Miracle Mile as well too, but I'll get your thoughts first on that one.
No, I mean, very humorous way of analyzing it. I do think Laura Muir gets her coaching advice directly from the Queen, so that could be. It kind of has to follow those. No, I'm just kidding. I think we give Laura Muir a little bit too hard of a time. I think she races, like you said, races to win, and maybe she can never go away from that. We do like, and I think I mentioned that podcast. We do, we put mistakes of other athletes under a microscope, and then when Americans do anything right, we call them a tactical genius. I think that's a little bit of some bias, but Jenny Simpson makes it awfully tough to break that bias because she is so smart and maximizes her ability so well. As far as Muir,
go ahead.
I don't know. I mean, we could say Muir makes all these mistakes. She's in that 2017 race. She's in position. So, I mean, I just don't, maybe she just doesn't, we could say she wasted all of her energy. I think we're kind of looking for mistakes. She's there with 100 meters to go. So that's basically all you can ask for.
No, I understand that she's there. But I guess I disagree slightly in saying that she runs 100% to win and Simpson is just to medal. I think she makes an initial move to do that, but then she second
Mm-hmm.
guesses herself. And as I mentioned before, you can almost see her thinking and overthinking about it, whereas Simpson knows herself so well and runs off of instinct. If Mura was really running for gold, as we mentioned before, go hard from a ways out. Don't leave
Mm-hmm.
it to this kick against Kipyegon, or don't leave it to this kick against whoever it is out there, Sifan Hassan or Dababa, especially when you've run as fast a time as she was. Do what Sifan Hassan did in 2017 or 2019,
Right.
right? Go,
Right.
go, go, go. Like if that's the way to medal or bust, right? If you want an outcome where you're either going to get first or you're going to get 12th, her going out hard or making a definitive clear break is the move. But dropping these, leading when the pace is 71 seconds is just nonsense. Like it doesn't that doesn't help, right? That doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
Like what's the point of that?
Other than I guess
I
being
guess
in
if
position. Yeah, you're not
yeah,
having to
well,
work yourself out. That's probably your thought.
I guess 71 is the wrong number, but like leading when it's fast, but not fast enough to drop anybody. Because
Mm-hmm.
Central led, but the pace was really slow.
65.
So
Yeah, yeah,
it was
yeah.
roller derby. It was roller derby.
Mm-hmm.
So being in front was more important than conserving energy because it was so slow and there was not much energy to conserve. And
Yeah.
that's what Nick Willis was talking about. Like it was the time he was not, uh, you know, uh, where people had given him feedback before about whether or not he was on the rail or off the rail. Like, but leading when the pace is fast, but not a fully committed move is just setting yourself up for it. But I agree with you. Like, and the Brits I think are harder on her than anybody else. Like her fans are harder on her
Of course.
than anybody else.
Yeah.
And that race just left so much to be analyzed, which is why it was so much fun. Okay, let's go to his thoughts on the Bannister Landy podcast. He said, you posed a couple questions which you probably aren't really that interested in receiving replies to, but hey, we've got all the time on our hands, so I thought I'd reply anyway. First, what's the difference between Great Britain and the UK? Great Britain, listen to this, Lincoln, because you asked this question. Great Britain is England, Scotland, and Wales. The UK is England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Just to add to the confusion, at the Olympics and Worlds, we compete as Great Britain and Northern Ireland. To further add to the confusion, almost all decent Northern Irish athletes are eligible and compete for Flick of Ireland. You got that?
Yeah, I mean, I know the conflict between Northern Ireland and other parts of Ireland. Well, I don't know the conflict. I've heard of it. So,
Break
but
it down
it's
for us, Lincoln. Yeah.
very confusing. Well, going back to Paddy O'Sullivan in 1740. No. Okay, I'm still as confused as ever. But okay, go ahead.
No, he said so. No, it's you can understand this. Great Britain is England, Scotland, and Wales, and then when they say UK, you just add Northern Ireland to
I know,
that
but
spot.
why can't Northern Ireland be a part of Great Britain? Why can't they? They just want to be their own thing.
Well, that goes back into the history, so that you'd
Yeah,
have to dive into.
yeah.
Get on Wikipedia, read some books, and do your research.
Okay.
Second, why do we have so many good currently, especially in Scotland? Several factors. The 2012 Olympics and 2014 Commonwealth Games effect. Existing young athletes got a boost in motivation, and Athletics Club received a big boost in members age 11 to 16 at around that time. We'll continue to see the impact of that in most of another 5 years or so. There's some fantastic athletes currently aged 14 to 19 coming through. Um, didn't who was that? Wasn't there like a crazy good 800-meter
Yeah,
young
I was
runner
just
that was
thinking
really
of that.
young?
Yeah, Max
Yeah.
something, Max Durgan or something like that.
Two, history. Mid-distance runners are still being coached by people with firsthand memories of Ovett, everyone's favorite Steve, Kevin. That's a House of Run inside joke there. Coe,
Mm.
Karam, and Elliott. Our top 5 all-time have average 1,500-meter time of 3:29.9. 3, the U.S. collegiate team. O'Hare, Gurley, Kerr all went through your system, and there's no coincidence that in tactical races they often beat Whiteman and Grice, who have the best PBs. 4,
Mm-hmm.
competition. They need to be good just to get on our team. The fact we left a 3:30 runner Grice behind last year says everything. This lot are good, but the generation of 800 runners coming behind them are way better.
Oof.
That is, I mean, just kind of backing up Josh Kerr's point there about how good it is on the other side of the pond.
They got something figured out, and I
Yeah.
thanks to that email for all that information. The impact of the 2012 games, it can't be overstated. I'm glad he used
It's never one thing.
this lot that made it feel extra British. So thanks to that. Yeah, they're exploiting our system for their benefit. Look at that. Freaking, they need to thank us every. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm glad we get some of these British athletes over here to come up and see their talents, and I think they have something figured out that maybe the US doesn't. They really appreciate their athletics, whereas we we have to pull people from the soccer teams over here, and I don't know. I don't really know what I'm saying.
The pitch.
But there's no reason. Yeah, there's no reason that Scotland should be as good as the U.S. in the 1500. But that's kind of the case right now on the men's side.
Yeah,
I guess women is Laura Mears. Is she Scottish?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. God, man. What about Gemma Reekie? She's Scottish too, right?
I believe so, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Scotland,
It's
not
where
just
it's at
known
right
for
now.
their green grass and Scottish stuff.
Yes.
I don't know. Scottness. Yeah. And golf courses.
All right, we'll leave it there. There. Great ending to the show. FloTrackPodcast at gmail.com. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Tomorrow it'll be me and Gordon. And then on Friday, close out the week with a Lincoln and Gordon special. It's going to be exciting. Yeah. Thanks to Alon for producing. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.